Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, it is my first sit-down review in quite some time. I explained the reasons for that in the kind of channel update video a little bit yesterday. But yeah, definitely nice to be back doing these, and I've got some really nice beers to take a look at over the next little while. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to stick to Sweden. We're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Always got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing the Gothenburg beers. It is just channel tradition these days. And for this one, we are going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from them, a few different styles, but I think it is fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of IPAs, and this particular beer comes from one of my favourite series of beers that they do. So very curious to see how it turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the Gamlestaden area of Gothenburg, Göteborg, and we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Spike Brewery. So this particular beer is called Back in Business, which I think is very appropriate, considering this is my first sit-down review in quite a wee while. And this one comes in at 8% ABV. It's a New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, and this beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for April of 2022. So yeah, looking forward to this one. This is hopped with Nelson Sauvin, Mosaic and Idaho 7, all hops that we know pretty well actually. So yeah, very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. But the business series of beers, if we can call it that, the ones that we've had in this kind of mini-series from Spike Brewing before have always been pretty damn good actually. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Spike Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being constantly added to because I live in Skåne in the south of Sweden. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Spike Brewery once again then. So Spike Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Gothenburg, Göteborg, and the company was founded back in 2014 by Mats Westberg, Marcus Axberg and Martin Johansson. So all three of these guys have previously worked in the IT industry, but it's now only Mats and Marcus who are still active in the company, and they now also have David de Sursi, who joined the company and is now the CEO. A very nice guy actually. I met him when I went to check out the Spike Brewery tap room. But the brewer at Spike Brewery is Bernardo Gava, who comes from Brazil, and he trained in brewing at VLB Berlin and then joined the company in 2017. But at the moment, these guys are producing around 250,000 litres of beer per year, and about 25% of their output is actually used for contract brewing other breweries' beers. And the brewery itself can be found in the Gamlestaden area, which is to the north of the main central part of Gothenburg, and they had an on-site tap room which was opening up on Saturdays and also serving food, but things have changed a little bit recently. So they announced in November of 2021 that they were going to move to another unit just across the road from the original brewery, and the new brewery is going to have a capacity to brew 500,000 to 600,000 litres of beer per year, and they're also going to have a 150-seater restaurant which will be up and running at some point in the middle of 2022. So I will need to go and check that out when I get up to Gothenburg once again. But as of April 2022, these guys have produced 135 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and as I mentioned earlier, I think this brewery are best known for their different kinds of IPAs. But with that said, we've had some really nice imperial stouts from them. They are starting to do some interesting sour beers as well, but yeah, IPAs I think are the ones that this brewery are best known for. We've had West Coasts, we've had New Englands, we've had black IPAs. Yeah, we've had quite a few different kinds from Spike, and they're always pretty damn solid actually, especially the ones that have business in the name. But yeah, I can't actually think what the last business beer we had was, but yeah, these ones are always pretty damn solid. So yeah, I thought this was a very appropriate one to use to get back into kind of sit down reviewing, if you like. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about Spike Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. You can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And you can check out all the other stuff as well. Actually, as well, there's lots of things on the internet these days. Beerizer is another very interesting site which tells you where you can get a hold of all these different beers. So yeah, let's crack on then and see what we get from this one. But just to let you have a little look at the artwork of this beer before we open it up. As you can see, this is very nice there. You can see the Spike Brewery logo. And this one I'm getting a bit of shadow for some reason in this video, not quite sure. But there you can see the Spike Brewing Company symbol. You can see back in business there. I was going to say Back to the Future because obviously it is a little bit of a kind of Back to the Future knockoff this. But yeah, this is a 440ml can. I believe I paid 55 Swedish kroner for this. So that is €5.50, £5 sterling, I guess somewhere in the region of like $6.50 American, something like that. But this one is hopped with Nelson Sauvin from New Zealand, 16% alpha acid, usually gives you that big white, green, grapey flavour. Mosaic and Idaho 7, both from America, both about 14% alpha acid. Mosaic is going to give you that lovely kind of tangerine note, whereas Idaho 7 is going to give you those very soft, like mango-y, you know, it's going to give you that very soft sort of mango, papaya, apricot-y type thing there. So a really nice hop blend in this one actually. But yeah, the Back in Business 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Spike Brewery in Gothenburg, Göteborg. Let's get stuck into this one and get it out and into the glass. Oh, plain silver top on this can, by the way. Getting a bit rusty with these because it's been a wee while since I sat down and filmed one of these, a couple of weeks, but it feels like a little bit longer. So yeah, let's get this guy out and into the glass. But definitely nice to return to Spike Brewery for the first time in a wee while. I think that will do for the moment. We've still maybe got about a quarter or so of it in the can, something like that. Let me just fix that so that my OCD is happy. Anyway, there we go. So as you can see, this one has poured quite nicely. So before the head disappears, I would say that the head is about a half finger of a frothy, perfect white head. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. And yeah, it looks really nice. There's a thicker foamy ring around the edge of the glass. The head itself is just fading away to be a kind of thin foamy layer at the moment, but the beer, as you can see, has poured quite a bright yellow actually. It's kind of a little bit like a mango juice. Now, as I've told you before, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. In the case of most IPAs, the wort boil is about 90 minutes, but I think you will get ones, some of the West Coast IPAs might be a little bit longer, but any adjuncts that you put in or any barrel aging that you do will also affect the colour of your beer. But normally with IPAs, you don't have to care about those 2 variables. But in terms of the level of haze that we're getting on this one, this might change when we put the rest of it into the glass actually, but as it stands, it's not the haziest of things that I've come across before. It's actually got a little bit more of a kind of natural haze to it. It looks a little bit more like some of these beers that are called American IPAs rather than outright New Englands. You know, I've seen the West Coasters being called, you know, either West Coast or California IPAs. Those are usually pretty clear, but they can have a bit of natural haze to them. And then the New Englands, of course, are the big soupy gloopy things. But there's American IPAs which have a mix of both things, some of the sweetness and stuff like that from the West Coast, but some of the breadiness of the New England. This beer does look a little bit more like an American IPA in my opinion. So a little bit of kind of natural haze to it, but remember in a New England, typically speaking, the level of haze in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree the yeast as well. But anyway, nothing particularly surprised about the beer in terms of its appearance. It certainly looks nice and inviting, makes me want to drink it, so can't really complain about that at all, I would say. But let's take a wee look at the aroma then before we get stuck into the beer itself. Looking forward to this. Ooh, that does smell nice. It does. So, first impression of the beer. It's a soft, bread crusty note that jumps straight out at me. There's a nice green component to it, quite big floral notes, and you've got quite an oily, fruity character to this one as well. But I've always, to be honest, I think when you get Nelson Sauvin in the beer, it often makes the thing seem just a little bit more oily. And Nelson Sauvin and Mosaic is quite a classic combination too. And these hops, when you put those two together, they do tend to give you quite an oily note. But yeah, this is quite a nice smelling beer, I have to say. Just on my first impression, I think this might be a more barley malt leaning New England. And remember, for me, as I always say, I think there's 6 elements you need to think about with a New England. But the kind of barley malt bready sort of thing, the oaty creamy notes, the wheaty bitiness, the sweetness as well, and then in some of the more American, mainly in the more American brewed ones, I would say, you can also get some rye graininess and some sort of farmhousey yeasty character. This one strikes me as being a little bit more barley malt leaning and oaty, actually, just from the aroma. But yeah, let's break that aroma down for you and describe it a wee bit more. So, backbone of the beer, absolutely. You get that soft sort of hedgehog, fresh white bready bread crust in there. On top of that, some fluffier white bread, but you can smell the wheat giving the bread a little bit of density, to be honest with you. You can smell that in this beer. And there's also a wee bit of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose with this one as well. And I can't remember, it's been a wee while since I had a spike beer. I think the last one was like January or something like that. I can't remember when the last Spike IPA I had was, because I think the last beer we had from Spike was a stout, or something dark anyway. But yeah, the malty aroma in this one is really quite nice. As I say, that fresh bread backbone, soft white bread, you can smell the wheat in there just thickening it out, a bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose, but I get quite a lot of oaty character in this one. And this beer highlights one of the things that I've always said on the channel. The oats are always a very good indicator of how fresh your New England IPA is. You can smell them showing a little bit of creaminess in this one, but you're starting to get some of the dryness out of it, and that tells you that this beer is not at its absolute freshest. And I'm reviewing this one quite late into April, of course, and that's partial on me. I ordered these beers a little bit later because I was at home, obviously, and on holiday and stuff like that. I wasn't even sure if I was going to order stuff for April, to be honest with you. But yeah, you can smell a little bit of that oatiness, the dryness that you'll get from the oats after a wee while in this beer for sure. But on top of that, I do get a little bit of sweetness. There is a wee bit of that kind of Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing. So yeah, I do like how that goes together in this one. But yeah, quite a barley malt and oaty leaning New England IPA for me in any case. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then. So there's a wee teeny bit of earthiness, which I suspect will be coming from Mosaic, but you've got a nice, quite smooth and quite oily green component to this one. I do get a fairly deep kind of floral aromaticity out of this one. I get a little bit of grassiness, and it's kind of a wet grassiness that comes out of this. Yeah, that's interesting. And then on the fruity side of things, I don't think we need to say any more about the green component. It is mainly floral leaning, but with a bit of a more wet grassy note. But on the fruity side of things, it's really good. On that side of it, it's got a very on the fruity side of things, you can definitely smell that Nelson Sauvin backbone. Absolutely, you get that white, green, grapey character coming out of this one, and it smells absolutely lovely. That is the backbone of the beer. But in fairness as well, the more that your nose adjusts to it, you start to get the American hops out of this one. So the New Zealand hop is like the backbone, so I'd be curious to know whether the Nelson Sauvin has been done as an early edition hop. Remember, early edition hops are the ones that tend to give you your bitterness added within the first hour of the wort boil. And then late edition hops are the ones that will give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Dry hopping is the one that gives you completely flavour and aroma. New England's use the latter two. West Coast IPAs use all three. Yeah, this one for me, yeah, it's the Nelson. The Nelson Sauvignon is absolutely the backbone of this beer, but you get this really nice kind of how do we say, you start to get, you can smell the kind of softer tropical notes. You get a little bit of the mango and the apricot and stuff from the Idaho 7, and then at the front of the nose you get that oily tangerine orange from the mosaic. Absolutely. Aroma wise, this is very, very nice. Yeah, so the Nelson Sauvignon, white green grapes, then you start to get the Idaho 7 coming out of it a bit later. And I think the Idaho 7 actually is a bit more apparent than the mosaic, to be honest with you, in this one. And then you get that tangerine orange coming out of the mosaic itself. So yeah, this is a nice, I have to say, this is quite a nice smelling beer actually. I like what this one has to say about itself in terms of aroma. But yeah, let's fire the rest of that in there. Get started. Yeah, no sediment on the bottom of the can actually, so I think it's fair to say this beer just wasn't all that hazy. But yeah, you can still get some good New England IPAs that aren't madly hazy. So yeah, maybe just more of a barley malt leaning one. But yeah, let's get stuck into this one then. So yeah, this is the Back in Business, an 8% New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, double IPA from Spike Brewery up in Gothenburg. We are back in business here with the sit-down reviews on Rampant Lion Reviews. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. That's pretty nice. You know, this is interesting. On the first taste, it's actually, it really is more like one of these beers, as I say, that would be termed an American IPA, rather than it being out and out New England. It's quite oily and slick. I like it. I do like this beer. But as I say, it is quite oily. You know, it's more of an oily and slick and very slightly bready New England IPA. Of course, when it comes to the New England IPAs in Sweden these days, you know, it's Fermenterarna, you know, Duck Pond, Stigberts, of course, OO Brewing. These guys are the big boys in terms of this style. Spike Brewery have always been one of the breweries that are a bit more, you know, kind of all-rounders with the IPAs. They'll do West Coast every so often, they'll do a few New Englands, they'll do black IPAs and stouts and stuff like that. But yeah, this is quite an interesting one actually. It feels different from the other New Englands that we've had before. Yeah, no, I have to say, I think this one, it really does come across as more of one of these beers I've had that's been termed American IPA. I think that's safe to say this one is. We've had ones from Spike before that have been a lot more hazy and a lot more creamy and stuff like this, but that is a nice beer, and it is definitely kind of in keeping with the standards that I would expect from the business series, if we can call it that, from Spike Brewery. But yeah, it is more of an American IPA rather than being an all out New England. I think that's a safe thing to say. But let's break this beer down for you and just describe it a wee bit more. My first impression of it though is it's kind of like the aroma. It's got the green component's a bit more pungent. It's got the oily fruit, and you've also got that yeah, you also have that nice kind of you know, just bready base to it, which is interesting. Yeah. So yeah, middle third of your palate then, let's look at that. So we'll focus on that. So the base of that middle third of your palate, you can feel that little bit of just kind of grainy bread crust forming the backbone of the beer. Absolutely. And that lingers there into the aftertaste. In fairness, you do get a wee bit of graininess out of this beer. It really does have a wee bit of that kind of bread crusty character to it. It's maybe almost a little bit like a kind of wholemeal bready sort of thing actually. So yeah, grainy bread crust. On top of that, you can feel a soft, fluffy white bread, although that graininess really does linger there. Does this beer have a bit of rye or something in it? No. No. Just wheat and oats. It must be one of the types of barley. They could be using a little bit of spelt malt in this or something, because it really I remember the spelt wheat malt actually having a little bit of this kind of grainy character to it. So that's really interesting. That's piqued my interest actually. But yeah, this beer, it really does have a grainy bread crusty backbone, but on top of that, softer, fluffy white bread. And then, yeah, softer, fluffy white bread. And on top of that, you can feel the wheat just thickening out that whole layer, which is quite nice. But then on top of that, you can feel the oaty character of this one. And as I said earlier, you can feel that the oats are a little bit drier in this beer, just because it's not at its prime freshness. I think we can say that quite safely. But yeah, the more that you drink of it, you do start to get a bit more of the kind of thicker wheat and the oats. But in the middle of your palate, you can feel there's like a little circle there, and it's a very thick, dense oat. Then as you move out toward the edge of the palate, it just gets a little bit kind of drier and things. So yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, though, with this being 8%, of course, you do get a wee bit of sweetness. So in the very middle of your palate, you can feel there's a teeny little circle of a kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of this beer. So yeah, the way that this goes together, I think, is really nice. Yeah, it's good. I think it really just becomes more and more grainy, I think, the further into the aftertaste that you go. But on the back of that, on the back third of the palate, you can feel a wee bit more wheatiness and things out of this beer. So let's look at that. The border region between middle and back third of the palate, again, you can feel a little bit of a bready build up there. But yeah, base of the back third of the palate, a little bit more kind of grainy and bread crusty again. On top of that, you can feel that the white bready layer is a little bit thicker, but that graininess, of course, is a little bit more kind of intense in a way. And as I've always said, bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, a bit more of an intense, grainy bread crusty sort of thing. A slightly taller white bready layer, then you can feel the wheat on top of that, and the wheat gives you a little bit of bite in there. And then on top of all that, you've got the yeasty character. So for me, the yeasty note in this one is like a kind of soft, grainy, white bready note. Yeah, so the wheaty side of this beer really kind of that kind of forms the base, actually, I think, of the yeastiness almost. So yeah, on top of the kind of wheaty bitiness, you get this slightly more dense white bready. You get this slightly more dense white bready sort of thing to it. It's a little bit and then yeah, it's got a little bit more of that yeah, it just has a wee bit more kind of, you've got the dense white bready thing in the middle, then a little bit of the kind of grainier, kind of slightly crackery side to the yeast sitting outside of that. So it's really interesting, that again. But yeah, on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. So yeah, as you come further forward, you can feel that the height of the flavour on the back third of the palate as you come further forward. It just densifies, can we say, densifies as you go into the middle third of the palate and squashes together a wee bit more. And I like that. Hoppy side of things. Back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there. And as you move further forward, it becomes quite an intense floral aromaticity. You've got that nice deep kind of spicy floral aromatic sort of thing in this one. As you move further forward, and you can really feel that toward the front corners of the palate. But round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is definitely lighter and grassy, but at the same time it's that big floral note that's really kind of lingering there. But front third of the palate, we'll take a wee look at that now, and the fruity side of the beer. Don't think there's anything else we need to say about the green side of things. But yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a sort of bready build up there. The base of the front third of your palate is a wee bit more, yeah, you can feel there's a wee bit of graininess in there, and then on top of that, There's a smoother white bready note, but I do get a wee bit of the oatiness actually forming the base of that front third of the palate too. But then on top of that, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So yeah, on top of that, the fruitiness just lingers there. So the fruitiness in this beer is quite interesting as well. So yeah, the fruitiness for me, the whole of that front third of your palate, you can feel the Nelson Sauvin just acting like the backbone of it all, to be honest with you. You get that white green grapey sort of thing, almost like a gooseberry type flavour, that sits there. But then in the back half of that front third of your palate, it's a wee bit more, yeah, it is a wee bit more kind of, you get a bit more, you do get a little bit of passion fruit from the Idaho 7, then as you come further forward it's a bit more like a juicy mango, and you've got soft apricot-y notes in there. But then as you move into the front half, as you move into the kind of front half of that front third of your palate, you start to get the more kind of tangerine orangey notes out of the mosaic. So yeah, I like how all of that goes together in this beer. The fruity side of it is nice and big and oily, and you know, all three of these hops fit together quite well actually. Nelson Sauvin and Mosaic's always been a solid mix, but putting the Idaho 7 in there is quite interesting because it just gives you that wee bit softer tropical character in the beer too. So yeah, this is quite an interesting proposition, this beer from Spike Brewing, I have to say. I like this. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour description. So mouthfeel wise then, I think this beer, I think it's quite mid-bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth on this one, and overall I'd say the beer is fairly slick. In terms of a New England IPA, it's definitely not the thickest and creamiest of ones that I've come across. It is definitely a little bit more kind of slick and oily, to be honest with you. In terms of hoppy bitterness, what would we say for this one? I think this is maybe about 40 IBUs, something like that. Yeah, about 40. Yeah, maybe about 40 IBUs. Yeah, 40 IBUs. Malty side of the beer, as I say, quite bready, barley malt leaning. There's a wee bit of smoothness and sweetness in there, and you've got that nice oily, fruity character to it as well. But yeah, I like how this one. Yeah, I do like how it goes together. The fruitiness for me, nice, big and oily, and you've got a mix of tropical. You've got a mix of that kind of tropical sort of thing, and the more citrusy side from the Idaho 7 and the Mosaic respectively. But then you've got that kind of smoother sort of thing from the Nelson Sauvin going on as well. Overall, a nice beer, this one, but I think stylistically it is definitely more of an American IPA, because of the oiliness and things like that it has, and the bit of sweetness. Pardon me, this bit of sweetness that it has too. More of an American IPA, this, than an all-out hazy, creamy New England IPA. But yeah, it's a thumbs up from me. I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but you know, as I've always said in these videos, I'd be quite happy with, you know, like 200 mils of each beer rather than a big 440 can. So yeah, I'm going to go away and sip on the rest of this one for a wee while. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this. This was the Back in Business, an 8% New England Hazy, as they call it, double IPA, but more of an American IPA in my opinion, from Spike Brewery in Gamlestaden in Gothenburg. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Spike Brewery in the comment section as well. And as always, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Check out my social media, check out their social media, have a go at these beers, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slange, skull, cheers. Make sure you check out Spike Brewery from Gamlestaden in Gothenburg. Ciao just now.